Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne. This is where I give you my off-the-cuff and unrehearsed thoughts on marketing data and philosophy. This week I'm talking about the downsides of competitive moats. Now you might be wondering, what is a competitive moat? Well, it's a term that comes from Warren Buffett. Buffett. Okay, this is the one. Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne. This is where I give you my off-the-cuff and unrehearsed thoughts on marketing data and philosophy. This week I'm talking about the downsides of competitive moats. Now you might ask, what is a competitive moat? The term comes from Warren Buffett, who got rich by inventing buffets. That's a fact. A moat is whatever makes your business hard to compete with. So that's not just being good at what you do, it's being good in a way that's structurally difficult to replicate. So he always used Coca-Cola as an example. So the recipe is replicatable. I'm sure we've all had roller cola and all these kind of different things. But the brand, the distribution, the shelf space, the network effects, all of these things are a competitive advantage that are very difficult to replicate. If you can copy something in 18 months, then you don't have a competitive moat. You have a head start on your competition, basically. And why is everybody suddenly talking about it? Because AI has made execution advantages really temporary, really shorter than they used to be. Things that used to be hard to build, like content libraries, customer service teams, code, can now be replicated faster, cheaper. And so the question everybody's asking is, what can't AI commoditize? And the answer people keep landing on is data, specifically proprietary data, specifically data quality. And the logic goes that if your model is trained on better, cleaner, more specific data than anyone else, you win. And so the data moat is basically, the argument is that generic AI is available to everyone. The model itself is not an advantage. What the model is trained on or fine-tuned on is where the differentiation will lie. And if you have years of proprietary customer behavior, clinical outcomes, financial transactions, user feedback, that can be leveraged as a competitive moat. Nobody can scrape their way to your data. They'd have to build your business first to get it. And that's why it's really important. And that's why companies like Bloomberg, Duolingo, and health systems are suddenly very interested in what they're sitting on. What happens when everybody chases the same moat, though? If everybody's strategy is that our moat is going to be data quality kind of stops being a moat. A moat, by definition, has to be something that the other side can't cross. If everyone is digging the same ditch, then nobody kind of has one. So the first mover advantage in data is real, but narrow. So once competitors have comparable volume and clean pipelines, then you're competing back on product, basically. There's also a collection arms race problem that companies are starting to hoard data they don't yet know how to use, which is expensive. It creates liability. It builds false confidence. People are just thinking, well, we'll collect this and maybe it'll be useful in the future. Competitive moat, get all the data we can. And that's not really good. And it's not in the spirit of GDPR, data residency laws. Increasing regulatory scrutiny means that the data moat has a compliance ceiling that most people aren't really kind of pricing in. The problem with data quality is that everybody's saying it and nobody really has it. Certainly, I would say most of the companies that I'm speaking to on a day-to-day basis are working towards it proactively, which is great. But do they have it when we first talk to them? Probably not. In most companies, data is still siloed, inconsistently labeled, historically biased, and poorly governed. And people often come to us and they want clean data, but they don't realize that clean data needs to be towards an end outcome, which is a business metric. You can't just put a load of data in and clean it towards nothing. It doesn't make sense. It needs to be towards a particular use case. This is a common thing I'm having to explain more and more at the moment. And so then you have to think as a business, well, what are our use cases? What's important? And you go step by step building something up at that point. And so the gap between we have a lot of data and we have useful data is where most organizations I'm speaking to still live. Cleaning and structuring data is expensive. It's relatively slow. It's unsexy. And it can't really be done by AI. To some degree, it could be done by AI if the use case is really common and popular and the data sources are really generic. But in most cases, businesses are unique. The data modeling needs to be unique. And so if you have 15 systems and 10 years of customer data, then you have worse training data than most of your competitors who have done it for a couple of years properly. And I think the thing with data and clean data is that it takes years to centralize all the data. It just does. Even if you have an agency like us who are going to help you get there a lot faster, it takes time to get to that point. And that time is a competitive disadvantage and a cost in the meantime. There's also a confusion with sort of the network effect. A lot of people sort of conflating data moats with network effect moats, and they're kind of different. So a network effect means that the product gets better as more people use it. So Uber, LinkedIn, Airbnb, anything that's like a two-sided marketplace, of course, eBay. A data moat means that your model gets better because of what you've already collected, but that advantage is static unless you keep collecting better data than anybody else. So most companies kind of have neither. They have a database and they have a pitch deck, but they don't necessarily have a competitive moat or a network effect through their data. And the uncomfortable truth about data moats is that data is only a moat if you can turn it into a better product faster than competitors can approximate it, or buy the data from somebody else who is probably not really scraping that data from anywhere and is stealing it or making it up. If your data advantage doesn't translate into something that the customer actually experiences, it's an internal story, it's not a market position. The companies winning at data right now aren't winning because they have more, they're winning because they have built the infrastructure to use it well. And using it well is not really a data or analytical problem. The systems and everything exists today. It's really a logic problem of understanding what's really important to customers, what are they going to buy, what is the thing that will make your product stand out, and how can data enhance products to a better degree than your competitors. Because it's really easy to say, oh, we're going to use their data to personalize their experience. This is the most common one that people will talk about. Okay, but what's that worth? And how do you know it's worth that? If you're not doing some analysis to begin with, that's really a difficult question to ask. And what does personalization mean? If you've not got the usage data on it, which a lot of companies don't because most people sit in the middle, they're not active users, then do you get much of an advantage from that? And so the problem is more strategic than most people are thinking. Infrastructure is replicatable. The data is what is the table stakes, basically, in ensuring that you have this competitive moat. And so you have to think about things from the end and work your way backwards. If data is going to be a competitive moat to you, you need to think, how are you going to commercialize that? What's the model going to be? What's your go-to-market? Remembering that distribution is the number one most important thing today by a million miles, because everybody can make anything in AI in 5 minutes. Distribution becomes really important. There's only a limited amount of channels. Those channels all have a cost associated with them. If your channel is, I'm a B2B company, I'm going to sell on LinkedIn, then those costs are going to absolutely skyrocket because everybody is going to be doing the same thing. And so advertising on LinkedIn becomes more profitable for LinkedIn, more expensive for you. That hurts your market units. In the meantime, you're collecting all this data, which has a cost associated with it. It's a precarious place to be in. And so you have to think at the end, you have to think about your commercialization strategy of any competitive moat or any feature that you want to enhance with data to begin with. And then you have to think about what is the MVP? What is the least amount of data I can use to get to an answer? And that's what a lot of people aren't doing. They're thinking about 15 systems and 12 things, and they're not thinking about how can I get somewhere with the least amount of data. Heuristics is massively being overlooked as a solution. It's often a very good solution to begin with. You can get 80 to 90% of a correct answer quickly and cheaply, and then the remaining 10% can be built out or extended when you then have the data. If you're watching this and you're thinking, well, this doesn't necessarily talk about the downsides. The downsides and the danger of competitive moats are that everybody is going to start doing the same thing as that you're doing. Nobody will have that distinct data. Your competitors will potentially have very similar data sets to you at an aggregate level. And so you really need to understand how your brand and your user journey are comparatively different to other people's. That becomes more and more important. And that means a lot more first-hand research. It means going for the customer journey of your competitors, because those small differences will make an impact. I have had companies where they do exactly the same thing in exactly the same industry, and they have different customer journeys, they have different customer profiles, they have different LTV matrices. And so understanding that in detail is really, really important. The other thing, that the reason why it's a downside is because it has a cost associated with it in the meantime while you're figuring all these things out. It's a time and cost associated to getting to the stage where you can say that it makes a difference. But the problem is today people are understanding the problem from the wrong side up. They're starting with, we've got all these systems, let's try and get to some point, instead of thinking about what's the individual use cases I can get to get to that answer quicker. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking this is a problem that sounds familiar with you, you're thinking about starting some sort of AI initiative or data product that's facing, and you're just not really sure where to start, then this is one of the few times I'm going to try and sell you something. 173 Tech have recently teamed up with Epic. We're doing this new service, AI feasibility study. It's 4 weeks, it's a set cost. We at 173 Tech are looking at the data feasibility of what you're trying to build. Epic are looking at your go-to-market, your commercial reasoning, how much you can charge, all this kind of cool stuff. And we give you an answer of what to build very, very quickly. We're going to do the high-level thinking for you as people who have built data products and saved people loads of money before. They're going to look at it from a commercial standpoint, and it's a really quick, easy way that can save you a lot of money if you're just not sure about the right question to ask, because this problem about data moats is not a question of building things. Anybody can start building these things, I think. But the people who will succeed are the people who have the experience and can ask the right questions and get to the value of the data much quicker. I will put the link in the chat below. But these are the downsides of a competitive moat that maybe you're not thinking about today.